teenager solve the problem of eviction? What message would she want to give and take away from a political rally? What would he plan to do to clean up the local rivers and surrounding areas? How would living in China heighten her understanding of the shades and subtleties of multiculturalism? These are only some of the real-life issues that students in the school district of Mamaronek, New York work on daily, led by Superintendent Extraordinnaire Robert Schaps. For those of you, and I can only assume it was most of you, who were mesmerized by the first part of my chat with Robert and his verbal illustrations of what makes a school system that works, you are so lucky, because there's even more. More of how a leader can use his position to make each teacher, each student, each parent, and each administrator feel valued and a participant in the positive changes in their educational world. And if you didn't have the chance yet to listen to the first part of Robert's chat with me, no worries. Listen to this part and then go back to the first. His intelligence and the malleability of his decisions are not linear, but rather universal. In this ending to our chat, as Robert prepares rather reluctantly to leave his cherished position as superintendent of a district that has blossomed under his tutelage, we're going to learn more of his vision of how he's managed to foster the myriad of facets that make up a healthy student population and community. And I think you're going to be especially excited by how he's integrated, for instance, his extremely diverse community in a 50-50 model of bilingualism and his continuous education from the Marshall Report, which is a bastion of wisdom I wish I'd known about before for all educators. In this chat, I read 3 of the founding principles of the report because I wanted to confirm with him that these form the basis of his ideology. Now, I read really fast during the chat, so here they are, so you can see right from the beginning how they have influenced pretty much everything Robert has created in his 13 years in Mamaronek. And these 3 questions are: what does learning look like? What's worth understanding today and tomorrow? How and where does learning thrive? How Robert used these questions to create authentic learning in the curriculum is what's going to amaze you in this chat. So, are you ready for a fabulous round 2? Let's go. Let's jump into the bilingual program because it's another one that you're very proud of, and it's so relevant and important nowadays, especially in the United States, where a second language is not always considered to be a priority in a lot of families' lives.
So it's a wonderful story because I think it's a good bookend to the first example about math. Sometimes you go down a path as a leader where you don't know where you actually are going. You have a sense, intuitive sense of why it matters and what the research says. And so we have certainly, when I arrived in 2010, our Latino, Hispanic, or Spanish-speaking population was about 8 or 9% of the overall population. And within 5 years, it became 22% of our school population, an enormous exponential growth in Spanish-speaking families, primarily from Guatemala or Central America, but from really all over the world. We started to do research on the changing rule. Well, first of all, we knew New York State was changing regulations on bilingual education requirements. And so I wrote a bilingual grant to kind of really use from the state to position ourselves better to really focus on students else who really needed more instructional time. And through that process, started to delve into the research on the power of dual language programs. And really, this is honest to God's truth. I sat into a meeting with the board and said, you know what? We were going down this path of bilingual multiculturalism, but I got something better for us. We're going to start a 50-50 dual language program and make it a district program available to any family who would like to. However, we do need a foundation of Spanish-speaking families to join in. And so the following year, we started in kindergarten, and we had a lottery, and we had 48 families, 24 English speaking, 24 Spanish speaking, and kicked off our dual language program with a 50-50 model, alternating instruction each day. We wanted to maximize the experience, so we actually have a Spanish speaking PE teacher and a librarian, because in the minutes when you were in the Spanish zone, we wanted you to be in the Spanish zone in all aspects of your day. And here we are, 13 years later, and we have our first cohort of 10th graders now, because it's continued through the host system from kindergarten. We have over 680 of our 5,600 students enrolled in this program. So from grades K through now grade 10. The 10th graders are going to participate in AP Spanish language as their course as sophomores. And I think what I didn't anticipate is really what it meant to the community, Donna, because there were parents after the first 2 years who really felt that they were excluded from a public school because of their language, who felt now that this was their home. And I think if the one thing that was powerful to me the most is that feeling that as a Spanish-speaking parent, I belong here. This is my place. This is my community. My culture matters. And the celebration of who we are and who I am. So to me, that was the golden nugget of the decision. But sometimes you have an instinct about a direction to go, and then you base it on the research and the power of a program, and then you see where it develops and goes.
You're saying that these 10th graders are now doing AP Spanish, which is an incredibly hard, the studies are incredible. I mean, it's college level.
Yes.
So
our goal was to say, if this program is successful, the metric for us would be that these students who are as juniors and seniors would be fully immersed in college instruction in Spanish. And it's interesting because I came from Massachusetts, where we had a FLES program who offered French and Spanish beginning in kindergarten. But to me, the lesson learned there was dabbling in a second or third language, right? Was not a commitment that really looked at multiculturalism, bilingualism in a way that really was powerful, similar to the rest of the world, the European model and beyond. You need to fully immerse the child in that learning in different subject areas.
So is there a specific model that you were following? You said 50-50
So we went with
model.
50-50 model. We've now shifted. We've gone really to 80-20, 70-30, 50-50. So now, the last few years, our incoming kindergarten cohorts start out in an 80-20, and they move by third grade to a 50-50. And only because we feel that really you're emphasizing Spanish right from the beginning really helps all children at this point. So,
okay, and you found teachers who were appropriate and
well, I think the challenge, I personally have attended the National Dual Language Conference in New Mexico, I'd say for the last 13 years. I think the programs across the country, the challenge, to your point, when you get to the secondary level, middle school and high school, is to be able to find certified teachers who are certified in a subject area like mathematics, but also have the language skills. And we've been able to do that. We teach in our middle school, all of our dual language students participate in social studies in Spanish, as well as Spanish language arts, where they actually have a second class that is all in Spanish in terms of the English language arts. It gets more difficult as you go up, but we continue to do that. World history at the high school level, we teach in Spanish. And we're not sure where we're going next, but it really is transformed our school district. People have moved. One of the reasons why I would say our overall enrollment had skyrocketed in the last 8 years is because a lot of families moving from Brooklyn, New York City, know of our program. They call up and say, how do I get my child in? And we say, first you have to move here. Second, you have to have part of the lottery. And there's a long waiting list to get in. So that's proof in my mind that we've hit on something that is positive, but also is really important for families and our identity as a school system.
No, I mean, there's nothing like a parent coming in and feeling seen and feeling heard and knowing that their children are going to be respected and their culture is going to be respected in both ways.
Yes.
So, yeah. All right. So, Robert, I want to go into ideology. And for me, it's taking a step back. But for you, it's not taking a step back because it seems like everything that you're talking about is based on your ideology. And when we talked a couple of weeks ago, you made it a point of saying that you studied Kim Marshall and the Marshall memos, which is absolutely fascinating because I think he puts out, what does he put out? Weekly newsletters?
Yes. Yes. Weekly
Okay, and
newsletter.
and you did the Project Zero at Harvard, and I just wanted to let me just read this very quickly because this is the core of what seems like to be your ideology. It says the thread connecting all of our inquiries is a persistent interest in three fundamental questions: what does learning look like? What's worth understanding today and tomorrow? And how and where does learning thrive? And it sounds like the projects you're implementing are really following that ideology. That is not what you grew up with. So how did you sort of fall into that?
I think for me was really the key to that was where I received my master's in teaching and learning, and that is at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I was influenced by Howard Gardner. I had the pleasure of, being sitting next to it and really having the opportunity to understand the ideas of David Perkins, who really was founding in Project Zero, Howard Gardner, this idea of teaching for learning and deep understanding. And that had a profound influence in me. I also believe that this model of teacher as coach, that the ability for a teacher to kind of, in some ways, tear apart all the pieces that add up to bigger ideas is really part and parcel of what teachers need to do and know and how they approach that sense of learning. So it was really getting at the heart of, for me, as an emerging teacher, of what does it mean to know something and to demonstrate learning? And what does that look like in terms of the broader context of the world? And that really set in stone for me for the rest of this career, teacher, administrator, and superintendent, in terms of how I look at it. And if I can give an example of really how it manifests in Mamaronek, we have a 4-year original civic research and action program at the high school. Students come in, they learn as ninth graders about how does civic engagement actually work locally, that what are the structures of it, why does people involve themselves in solving problems or improving communities. They then learn in their 9th and 10th grade year the tools of what does it take to do this work well, to affect change. And then they start to muse and really, in some ways, identify something, a burning issue that within their community they think they can help solve or move along. And then they reach out to mentors in the field, whether it's around food waste collection and to lower our footprint, or it may be some other issue like protecting renters in the community from eviction and legislative laws to strengthen the kind of situations of vulnerable renters. And then they go off and come up with a plan. And then they find a solution through that plan. And then they need to communicate it and act on it over a 4-year period of time. And to me, that is emblematic of what I mean by that, because some of that learning is originating in the classroom, in the traditional study of our political systems, our government, on that. Part of that is getting expertise from an outside mentor who has the knowledge and understanding of how it comes together. And part of it comes from the compassion of a child who understands and sees the world differently and feels committed to act on it. And that to me is as authentic as, because the students who emerge from that program, they have strong communication skills. They know how to get things done going from beginning to end. They are connected to a purpose that is tied to having to learn about complex systems, and they have to apply that in a real, what I would say, setting, all for what is the betterment of their localized community. So what I would argue is we don't need to teach civics, right? To get kids learning that. We need to have the kids do civics, and that's what we do here. And that's a perfect example of how my vision of that comes to fruition.
Okay, and you're also a huge proponent of project-based learning. You were telling me that you do have mentors come in and you do have your students are working on authentic materials in the classroom. And am I mistaken that you said you also have beehives somewhere in the district?
Yes, we do. So we were the first public school, I think one of few in America, if not the only, that we host bees. Our science teachers have created gardens to really support pollinator gardens to support our bees in our environment. And we produce about 150 pounds of honey that our students harvest each year, that our bee team. where they actually raise money to purchase our honey in the community to continue the program. It's been a phenomenal. We are, certainly sustainability is really important. It's a hallmark of our system. We are on Long Island Sound. We really believe in protecting the environment. And so making that connection is a perfect example. We also have participated in 3 cycles of the presidential election. All of our AP US government students, about 150 students, descend upon New Hampshire every 4 years to take an active role in the New Hampshire primary, first in the nation. Our students really write to the New Hampshire campaigns. They choose a candidate running. They work full time for a week in that campaign. We have a podcast studio where we have journal students who travel to New Hampshire, are there with all the international national press, and they report live from New Hampshire. They're interviewed from many of the CNNs, the BBCs of the world to get their view. We have a documentary film group that comes in and films that, but it's really getting kids to understand retail politics, where it all begins and how they work. So we have students who are building signs for a candidate, answering phones, going door to door, and then they are going and attending political rallies, but also working with the professionals to understand how our system of government, our political system unfolds. That's a perfect example. They continue in the off years to go to Senate races, to travel to rural West Virginia, to look at the plight of communities in a rural area of West Virginia, understand the issues that are important to them and make those connections by creating podcasts back in the studio about those experiences. We have a partnership. Pre-pandemic. We have the oldest public school Mandarin program, 1976, from the Ford Foundation grant. I formed in 2013 a partnership with Shanghai International School, where our students would live over in China for 2 weeks in homes with families, and they would come back and spend a month with us to really kind of operationalize our language skills and really understand culture, because our mission speaks to being really an active global citizen. And what a better way to do that than connecting and partnering with another school across the globe. So these are snippets of our experiences. We just broke ground, Donna, on a fabrication lab that is similar to a 5,000 square foot. It is a prototype studio with a what I call metal and a wood shop. We have the same printer that Boeing and Apple use, 3D printer that print prototypes. We have a 4-year design program where students are really focusing on human-centered design based on the IDEO of Stanford School of Design. And we kind of take principles of architecture, computer science, engineering, design, and students really use 4 years to, again, mirror industry in terms of project-based learning, where they are on teams by senior year, trying to solve a problem, building prototypes, working together, just-in-time engineering, and selling those to a public of experts in order to kind of demonstrate their knowing and understanding. So that is a quick kind of slice of what it was like to be a student in Mamaronek for the last 13 years.
All right. So much information. And what I do want to do is just explain to the listeners, I did not want to, I told you this, one of our high school friends encouraged me to call you. And I said, I do not want to talk to superintendents. Superintendents do not listen to teachers. They really have these ideas and they do whatever they need to do to implement them. And that is not at all what you're telling me you do. And this is not at all what I've read about from what other people say, that how influential you've been. And there's the whole political side. To continue being a superintendent, there is this political side. And yet you've been able to sort of sidestep and appease the appropriate people so that you can continue doing these incredibly innovative programs. One of the things you do, continuous education, opening your mind continuously. I mean, I'm just going to read a couple of what he writes in his memos. Though we claim to value children as individuals, we sort them into winners and losers. You need to think about that and decide, is that what I want from my students? How can I change the dynamic so that isn't what I'm asking them to do? So what I'm curious about is are these weekly readings that you're doing to keep yourself in the game and making sure that your ideology is fresh and relevant?
Absolutely. That's one aspect of it. Not only do I read it, but we share it with all our administrators and expect they're participating in that same adult learning. I see the basis for my kind of existence to help adults continue to learn so they can help children learn. And I think the Marshall Memo is an example of that commitment to or modeling adult learning that we think is critically important to build commonalities around the future of education. I mean, you touched on three points that stand out. One, we are in a highly politicized moment in education because it's politicized in the country, and it always falls within the realm of schools. That's number one. Number two, the world is changing. The marketplace for schools. When we went to school, public school and private school were really the two separate domains. But now we're in a marketplace of learning opportunities, and we need to demonstrate, as I say, the walls and the brick and the mortar will be here forever, but our value will and our worth and our continuing existence is based on what we offer and how we continue to look ahead. And I think I remind even the president of the teachers union that this is not about holding on to what we had or have, it's to really project into the future. So I would say that learning stance is really important. The second thing is, and you touched on it as well, is that it's important as a superintendent that you can't necessarily communicate all the dimensions of a decision publicly, and that you kind of seem like going into, if I can say, is a battle with a plastic sword, so to speak. You don't necessarily have the opportunity to explain yourself in a way that makes sense to different stakeholders. But and you don't face challenges or system challenges or problems that are really very black and white or clearly delineated. And so it's how do you recognize and understand the experiences of teachers, of custodians, of aides, and parents, and really kind of articulate that level of confidence and competence in a way that people can unpack and make sense, because you have a myriad of stakeholders and you're trying to survive. And I would say that it's not easy to do that. I think, but in the end, what you really want to do in a moment where there's such uncertainty around the future, where when we grew up, this idea of get a good education, get a job, be successful, move out to the suburbs, raise children, and repeat that cycle, that is completely gone relative to kind of the only thing you can really know is that there will be change and change will continue. So how do you help people kind of stay grounded relative to the emotional stress, the pressures, all of that in a way that they see that in some ways they'll be okay? You also touched on the fact that one of the first things I did was to untrack our system. When I came to Mamaronek, Jay Matthews, a writer from Washington Post in 1995, wrote a book about Mamaronek, talking about the haves and have-nots. The idea that there were prerequisites for AP courses and honors courses, that you had to go through hoops and hurdles to even get in, and a majority of kids could not open that door. One of the first things I did in 2013 with support of the board was actually remove all prerequisites. Our AP enrollment has skyrocketed, and guess what? The idea that now the pass rate would go down because anybody can get in, our pass rate has gone up. We have 55% of all of our juniors are enrolled in AP English, college writing course, and 87% of them pass that. We've expanded the opportunity, and when I created that plateau versus a peak. So we don't say, I'm trying to climb over you. We don't want students climbing over to get somewhere where everybody else. We say, what would a plateau look like relative that as many students get there? And our job is to ensure that we get as many kids on that plateau for success. And that's a different mindset. It changes. So we untrack mathematics in the middle school when districts around us were separating out kids at an earlier age, in third and fourth grade. And our results are just as good, if not better, than those surrounding districts, because we're teaching to all children. And we're understanding from a professional perspective, what are the skills needed and necessary for teachers to do that well for a multitude of learners.
Yeah, and it's not just the students are feeling seen, but it's also you're ameliorating a little bit of the cognitive, the stress on the cognitive development. So my last question to you, Robert, unfortunately, because we only have a certain amount of time and your time is incredibly valuable, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving us this time. What would you want other superintendents to know, how they could sort of mold their own schools in a really positive light and let their teachers and students feel seen and heard and valued?
I think it starts with a clear vision on what your institution stands for, and then be able to kind of back map in some ways how that comes alive in every aspect that you do. So it doesn't become verbiage. I work with a lot of different school boards and administrators in teaching a course. And when you see on websites these goal statements and pithy kind of things, what you really want to say is, what does it look like every day? If I walked into your place tomorrow and asked anybody about what's important in your system, what would I hear and how consistent would be? So I think it's beginning with that succinct, clear mission and vision, but understanding where and how it's going to be shared, number one, and two, how it's going to come alive in the day-to-day. And not get distracted by things that are not important, but staying true so that you can see it in everything you do and approaching it within that same consistent framework, whether in every aspect of learning. And so that's really my kind of mantra. I don't know if it works everywhere, but I do know that every community and every system is different, but they still have the same purpose and same pressures of expectation when it comes to an individual child and a perspective of how are you helping my child learn and grow and becoming a human being that's going to thrive in this universe. And if you could just start with that, Donna, I think that is, in some ways, is all-encompassing and overwhelming, but then you can build off in very simplistic and concrete ways. And I guess it's worked for me. I do think it sometimes is taking risks. I see myself as an entrepreneur. I've always believed in an entrepreneurial approach to learning. Growing up in a traditional place that, again, I think was more, if anything else, an image that kind of created the image that allowed for things to go. And sometimes you need to take chances and risks and articulate that in a way for right purposes, and people give you the room to kind of see how it comes about.
And I think that then all you need to say is go back to virtually the first elements is that for you, the students are very present in your mind, in your office. And at the same light, you are actually literally physically visible, and your presence is in each of the teachers' classrooms, either you yourself or the other people who work with you, because having a presence in the classroom, not to judge, but to support, is fundamental.
And I agree with that. And I would say it takes a lot of work, because making that commitment to be in those classrooms every day and doing it with fidelity and purpose is equally important. So it's not just the fact that you're seen and that people see you. It's what the outcome of that experience relative to understanding the life of a school. When I go into a school and go through the second grade on that day and stay for 15 minutes or 10 minutes in a classroom across the grade, I have a true sense of the learning that's happening within a grade level in a school on a given day. And that's powerful in my mind, if that's what we're about. So.
Oh, Robert, you are a treasure. You're a treasure. You're gonna find another district in the future and have this even more influence. So I just want to thank you again.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you for the opportunity. I've appreciated the opportunity to share, my perspective and my experience, and I hope to continue doing that in some form or fashion in the years ahead. Well, I can.
Okay, definitely. And then we're gonna have another talk in the future. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Oh my goodness. I really hope you've enjoyed these two chats with Robert Shapps and are looking forward to whatever future influence he has on our educational systems anywhere in the world. It's what our students need and what they deserve. Please check the show notes for details on what Robert has shared with us, and go to Doorways to Learning with Donna, where you'll find other incredibly informative chats with educators from all over the world, and also activities to promote varied learning at scaffoldingmagic.com. In the meantime, have fun in your classes and at home, and see you soon for more.